Welcome back to Mashy Niblick. Today we have a product review of the Telos Tee by Yada Golf.
But before we get into that, a big thank you to Timpanogos Golf Club for allowing us to film on hole 3 of their golf course. They just put in a bunch of new renovations and basically redid the entire course, and it looks awesome. So make sure to come check it out when you have a chance.
Alright, so we are going to start the review for the Telos Tee, but I do want to quickly acknowledge the reason why we're in the sand trap here at hole 3 is because this barrier is helping us block a lot of the wind noise, so we're giving you a slightly better video.
True. It's not because I hit a ball into the bunker, which I do happen to do a lot, but that's not the case this time. Anyway, we do want to acknowledge the relationship that we have with Yada Golf, who creates the Telos Tees. We are both pretty good friends with the founder, Abe, and I actually contributed to the Kickstarter campaign, and I was also part of a lot of the early product testing before the prototype of the tee was released.
Yeah, so my relationship with Abe, we did actually meet in college at a golf class, and through that we started golfing together, and that's when he decided to start his company, Yada Golf. So I was involved early on with some of the focus groups and the product testing, like durability testing at the early development stages when we just had prototypes. That being said, I have not invested in the company. I'm not a paid employee or anything like that. This is an independent review, but we do have a relationship with the owner, but we are striving to be honest and unbiased in the way that we review the tee.
So the Telos Tee comes in a little bag like this. There are 3 different color options. Now, what makes the Telos Tee special is that it has notches on the tee and an adjustable disc here. The idea is that you can adjust the disc to be the height that you desire on the tee and then make that disc flush with the ground every time you tee the ball up. And the idea behind that is that it drives consistency for all of your tee shots so that the ball is the same height from the ground every time that you tee up.
So the 2 main questions that we want to answer with this review is, should you buy it? And is it worth just under $10 for 3 tees? To answer the question of who should buy this or who it's made for, obviously the goal is to increase your consistency with your tee height. Now, if you're a longtime golfer, you've been playing for years, and you've got surgical precision with your height on the tees, maybe this tee isn't for you. It's not going to give you any benefit. For a lot of golfers, most golfers who are mid-handicappers like myself, this actually has a very powerful mental trick for me, and that's why I use it. So mostly, when I put a tee in, a regular wooden tee, whether I'm actually consistent with it or not, I don't know. I haven't measured yet. We'll get to that later. But when I put the tee in the ground, part of me thinks occasionally, I feel like I put the tee in a little bit too deep, or maybe I teed it a little high. Now, whether I did or not in reality doesn't matter, because mentally, when I go to make my swing, that's affecting the way I swing, right? If I feel like I put the tee in the ground high, it's going to change the way I swing. Whereas with this, I know that this distance is always the same, right? So mentally, whether it, let's just save the scientific part for later, whether it actually increases your consistency or not is almost irrelevant to the way that I use the tee, because for me, it's more about the mental game of knowing that I don't have to adjust my swing to make up for the fact that I'm inconsistent with my tee placement.
Exactly. And now, as far as whether it's worth it, we want to acknowledge that, $10 for 3 tees, it's a little bit steep, at just over $3 per tee. That being said, one of the promises that is made on the website is that a bag of tees is supposed to last you the whole season. Having used these for all of last season, I can attest that that is true. And that's coming from a golfer who habitually goes well below the ball and has a habit of snapping wooden tees at a rate of 1 per hole. It's ridiculous. But 3 Telos Tees did make it through an entire season for me, playing at least 1 round per week. I personally love the tee. I think it's worth it. And as soon as I snapped the 3rd tee at the very end of last season, I immediately went and bought another bag of 3.
The method that we came up with to test whether or not the Telos Tee is in fact more consistent than a regular tee is I'm going to go around with each tee and put it in the ground. I'm going to be as consistent as I can be with both tees, just a regular wooden tee and the Telos Tee. and then we'll measure the height to the top of the tee versus the ground. We'll then compare those numbers using science and figure out which one is scientifically proven to be more consistent.
Can't stress the scientifically part enough. A lot of science went into this.
Real quick before we get into the analysis of these tees, I want to point out 2 complaints that I have with the Telos tee that I forgot to mention earlier when we were recording. The first complaint that I have is the tee isn't very stiff, so if the ground is hard, sometimes you need to use both hands to get the tee into the ground, which is mildly inconvenient and sometimes frustrating. The second complaint is when you are putting it in the ground, sometimes the disc doesn't necessarily stay on the notch that you wanted it to be on. So if you're not paying attention and you're pushing too hard or too firmly, the disc will actually slide up over the little bump that was holding it in place, and then you can put the tee into the ground further than you thought you were going to. Granted, I've gotten used to it and it's not that difficult to overcome. Those are my only 2 complaints for the Telos tee, and with that said, I still use this tee regularly. It's not perfect, but I do prefer it over any other tee. Now let's see which tee is scientifically proven to be more consistent. Okay, now that we have our data, I am just going to plug it into Excel using the equals science function. And oh, well, you have to hit, for this to work, you have to hit tab instead of enter. So let's try that one more time. Equals science and tab. As you can see, what we have here are the measurements for the Telos tee and for the wood tee. I'm going to point out that all of the measurements are in millimeters, and this one has an asterisk because it's an outlier and I have excluded it from our super scientific calculations, which are in this box here. And as I have highlighted, the lower the number the better, and the wooden tee is just over twice as high in both the range and standard deviation. And the range is just the difference between the highest measurement recorded and the lowest measurement recorded. And then the standard deviation is a measure of how far away each data point lies from the mean. So you can see that the Telos tee is in fact more consistent because it does have a lower standard deviation. Now, if you are a stats nerd and you're upset about me only having 10 trials, or 9 in the case of the wood tee, don't worry, I am a scientist and you can trust these results.
So ultimately, the choice is up to you as far as whether you think the Telos tee is worth it and if it's going to help your game at all. Personally, I like to use it every time I'm teeing off, especially with my driver, because it helps me drive consistency with my tee shots. Now, if you decide that you would like to check out either the Telos tee or these cool golf polos that Yada Golf makes, you can check out the link in our description, which will take you there.
Thank you for watching, and remember to golf everywhere. You're starting it, right?
I'm sitting here waiting for you.